How's everybody doing today? Let's hear it! Come on! Why did you come to Orlando? Because when you're in the regular world, people look at you like, oh, you're crazy. You're going to talk about this Bitcoin thing again? And now when you come here, you're normal. And you will meet people that are way more earlier than you, that are way more exceptional, way more crazy. But when you're here, you're like, oh, I get it. I could talk to you. And then you'll be at the end of the week, I have to go back home now. So for all of you, I am so happy that everybody's here. I can't wait to talk to all of you. I'm very excited about the party tonight and with what we have scheduled for you right now. So let's, without further ado, we're going to come up with the panel speakers first, and then we're going to go to the keynotes.
You've got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You've got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You've got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You've got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up.
All right. Here we are, True North, navigating the financial frontier, True North world. Welcome back, okay? Welcome back. We're back. Okay, so I guess we got one of these clickers. I guess I'll stand. Yeah, here we go. So we've got an agenda. We've got live True North episode 26, strategy as an economy. We're going to do it live. We're just going to roll and do it as we would normally do it, shake off some jitters a little bit. It'll be great. We'll get into some keynote presentations. I'll do a keynote. Ben will do a keynote. Dan's got one, and then over to Tim. Then Grain will lead a session on volatility and options, and then we'll have a session on get to know the team and an ask me anything. So without further ado, I guess we could jump into it. But also a big thank you to everybody for being here. Thank you for the support. Thank you for continuing to listen on like Wednesday nights at midnight. It's pretty crazy that we'll get like 30,000 people on those things. So very appreciative of everybody taking the time out of their day and their week to come see us and, you know, talk about nerdy stuff. So thank you. So our live episode of True North, episode 26, we've got the crew up here on stage. So we are going to jump right into it here. So this morning, we're doing it live here. So this morning, Strategy announced another purchase of Bitcoin. So now Strategy has acquired 1,895 Bitcoin over the last week for $180 million. So they now hold 555,450 Bitcoin, just on an incredible tear. One important thing to note, and we'll talk about it here a little bit, but the one of the biggest topics here with the Bitcoin purchase in the last week is that the Strike ATM was used for $51 million. So it represents about 30% of the capital raised in the last week, which this is the biggest week that we've seen the Strike ATM be used. And Strike is a more accretive product to the balance sheet for MicroStrategy, for MSTR. So it's great to see that to get some continued traction. It seems like the earnings call may have done a pretty good job of drumming up some excitement about the Strike product itself. And I think we'll continue to see that grow over time. So you can also note that there's 128 million of the common stock ATM that was used. So there's now no common stock ATM left. And they did not use the 2025, the new $21 billion ATM over the last week. So why is this important? Let's get into the leverage update. So we show this every week. There's two columns here on the right-hand side, 555,000 Bitcoin held. The price when I put this together this morning was $94,208. So assets held on balance sheet is $52 billion. Debt of $8.2 billion, preferred stock of $1.6 billion. So a net capital of $42.4 billion and a leverage ratio of around 18.9%. So you also see that I have this new column over here on the right-hand side. So this is a pro forma looking at how much debt would be on the balance sheet. Should the convertible debt that's held on balance sheet be converted into equity, so it wouldn't be debt anymore. And so you can see the leverage ratio reduces from 18.9% to 13.2%. So meaning that the balance sheet is incredibly healthy, right? You can compare this to other companies that are trading in the stock market. They may have leverage ratios from, 30 to 50 to 80, and even higher, kind of depending on how they structure their business. So, and with that, we'll get into what is becoming strategy as an economy. So we've got the leverage update, and we'll just jump into our agenda. We're going to talk about investing on a Bitcoin standard. Is the 60-40 dead? Why is Bitcoin important in a world of exponential innovation and automation? And reshaping what we think retirement looks like. So maybe I'll kick it over to Ben. Maybe you want to talk about leverage and Strike. We'll just kick us off, and then we'll jump into these topics.
Yeah, and first, how amazing is it for us all to be in a room here just filled with people out of the retail community. You don't get this anywhere else. I mean, we're in a really, really special situation. And that, everyone should just acknowledge that you're all a part of what's happening up here, what's happening online. I mean, when we started this 7 months ago, not one of us could have possibly known that we'd be sitting up here on stage and talking to all of you, many of whom we know before you even come shake our hands because we've interacted so much online. And I mean, that support for our group and our community is just astounding. So thank you guys. The other thing I do need to call out, thank you, is I don't know if everyone else noticed the attack on lighting that just happened in here. Yeah. But I got real comfortable when they shut those lights off and I knew we were ready to roll, but we're going to do this, full brightness. So. Yeah, well, you get to come out of your basement once in a while and you get to talk to people. A lot of people probably aren't even going to recognize me without shadows coming from somewhere. So the one thing I've really loved, this is just one personal anecdote, is, now that I've started doing more media and started to be more public, how that I actually work for Swan, and so now I'm out there even more, is the thing that makes me laugh every day is when I go online and people take clips from my videos, but then they add darkness filters over them everywhere. So this community's had my back as much as anybody else, so it's just really amazing. Thank you all for being a part of this. Yeah. Thank you. Sure.
But before we go any further, over to Tim for not financial advice, please.
Great call.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope this microphone's on because what you're about to hear, it may be amazing, but it's not financial advice. Back over to you, Jeff.
Yeah, boom. All right, cool. We're going. Yeah, this is great. So generally, I do all my live streams. I'm standing up, so this is perfect. I think everybody else is sitting down, so I think this is normal. And so let's maybe talk about this. What's happening here, right? So we're talking about investing on a Bitcoin standard. Some of the conversation that we've been chatting about the past couple of weeks has been about, Bitcoin portfolio theory, right? You now have these new assets that have different risk return metrics, and you can start to create and shape an entire portfolio around Bitcoin type products. And I think Saylor really emphasized that this last week when he talked about the credit rating of some of these new instruments that are out in the market these days, right? So you think about the product of Strike, you think about what does the downside of Strike look like, right? If it's senior on the capital stack, what is the downside risk of this product? And I think the world is really starting to try to figure out exactly what the risk is associated with these products. And the risk isn't physical risk like most other instruments that you may be able to buy in the market. It's digital risk and it's volatility risk. And so how do you manage digital risk? How do you manage volatility risk? You manage volatility risk with over collateralization, and you can start to put statistical, mathematical calculations behind the scenes to understand what the downside risk is in any one of these individual products. So I think that's really reshaping how people are thinking about what a portfolio looks like. And
I think so. It's saying volatility risk is changing, right? But that's one of the things that Strategy has really been able to highlight for us is for so long you had all these corporate executives. Their main goal was to strip volatility out of their entire equity. And they thought that that was what success would play. And now that you see what the power can be when a company embraces volatility and harnesses volatility, again, the fire analogy, putting it into an engine. I mean, talking about it as volatility risk in this room almost seems weird. We all embrace it as the opportunity. It's the whole reason that we're in this. And we see what movement and an equity being alive looks like to the rest of the world now. And we're starting to get to that education curve where we can start showing people that just because something's moving, just because it's volatile, it doesn't mean that it's putting your portfolio at risk. It means it's generating an entire ecosystem around it. It's alive. And when something's alive like that, it enables everybody else to start building products around what you're doing and living their lives around what you're doing. I mean, so many people that I've had conversations with here are really harnessing MicroStrategy and the volatility of MicroStrategy and the benefits of that leverage that MicroStrategy is applying to really create their own life the way they want to live it. And that's just been such a powerful thing to watch happen because, while a lot of us early on were very into, the options and the covered calls that Soleil's been teaching the world. He's been doing a great service. He taught me. It was amazing. Yeah, we do love Soleil. I mean, when you finally got to the point where you have an equity that's different and you have a company that's not doing what all the other ones did, as an executive, it was a career risk to try to do anything different. You basically maintain until you get disrupted, and that's been the path. And so when you see now that the investing community, that Wall Street, that the retail community is willing to go on the journey with you, and they're willing to embrace volatility in your equity and ride the ups and downs with you, not always happily. And I'm sure many of us in this room have been on the receiving end of what happens when volatility goes down for a while.
Oh, yes.
But you start to learn that this is the product that enables everything. People are retiring using that product. Institutions are making money using that product. Investment banks are making money with that. I mean, it's just created this huge ecosystem that shows that you can really build around something when the executives are willing to let it live and evolve, and they don't try to contain it, just put it in one box that everyone understands because it's the same as everything else you're used to. It's really been a huge transformation in investing. It definitely changed my entire portfolio. If you have to look at all the equities you hold and actually sit and be honest with yourself about what you know about it and why you're holding it in the first place, it usually came down to, well, I bought it because I was told I had to diversify. So I heard this was a good company, so I bought that company, but I didn't know anything about it. And so part of being in this community that made it so fun and engaging is that we were all investing in this type of change in corporations. And because of that, we all had a curve we had to get up. The learning curve's steep for this. While it seems so simple, just buy Bitcoin, put it on your balance sheet, that's all you need. We all had to go through that phase of doing due diligence and finding people that understood different parts and had a different perspective than we had. And that's included a bunch of you. I've had so many people that have been analysts for big companies or have worked at hedge funds and institutions or fixed income that would come and share their experience and say, here's what you're missing. You just need to connect this dot. And it just made all the difference in the world. So having something like Startegy that we can all personalize and tailor to the way we want to invest is just a huge shift. And it's changing the conversation in corporate finance, where you see the word leverage all the time, but people are just learning what that means. And they're learning that the word leverage itself isn't scary. Sometimes you're very under-leveraged, but everyone just assumes because they hear you're borrowing that you're risky again. That's not the case here. And this recent earnings call, while it still has my head spinning, I've still got to go through it 100 times, it showed that they're building this strong foundation to build from in the future. They're well over collateralized. They're more creditworthy than most companies that you'll find on the S&P, nearly all. And it's putting us in an amazing position. So we're at the front of this, being able to follow this journey. And I think that we've got a really exciting and long road ahead of us with this as more companies come in.
Yeah, there's just so much asymmetric information, right? I mean, everybody in this room has clearly been following MicroStrategy or strategy in this evolution. And there are so many people that will still turn a blind eye to just Bitcoin itself and just the volatility of Bitcoin, let alone a company that's leveraging their balance sheet on Bitcoin and creating these securitized products with different risk return metrics. And there needs to be effectively a broad marketing campaign for the world to understand these products, which is kind of like what our team is. We're kind of a decentralized marketing team talking about Bitcoin and strategy and the evolution of these products. And, we'll get into that a little bit later, but, it'd be great to hear from some other guys, right? But
yeah, I agree with everything you said, Ben, especially the part where you said you love me. And
that was the part I meant the most.
I think everybody was thinking it. So
they were all thinking it. I just said, bring it to them.
But I think the key word that really struck me was ecosystem. Like in an ocean, sometimes there's dead zones where nothing can grow. And I feel like Bitcoin and especially strategy, since they're siphoning, money from the fiat finance world into Bitcoin, it's creating like I look at strategy as a coral reef, and then other organisms can grow off of that. We got MSTU, we got all of the ETFs, we got Strife, and I just think it's a place that other organisms and companies basically can find shelter.
Yeah, and you've got everybody's looking at where to create opportunity too. I mean, we're going to see, I don't know, in the next 4 years, we'll probably see 50 products come out that are related to Bitcoin and MSTR, just because there's money to be made, but you can design and create different products in different ways. Like, we've only scratched the surface. MSTY, IMST, MSTU, those are just scratching the surface. And I think we're going to see a significant evolution of what that looks like in the future.
Yeah, and I think something I picked up a lot from Jeff and listening to you guys talk is like this idea of Bitcoin as collateral, right? And I never thought about it that way. I was like, oh, this is just the fastest horse in like a, inflationary world, and like that's where I'm going to hitch my cart to. But it was really this idea of collateral, and especially the offerings of Strife and Strike, that made me change the way I thought about it as it's integrated into traditional finance. It's like, okay, so this stuff is really pristine collateral. It's verifiable. It can move at the speed of light. So now Strategy's stripping the volatility and backing these products by their stack and essentially harvesting yield from the arbitrage between the CAGR of Bitcoin and the negative CAGR of fiat. And I think it's like, conceptually, that's a big idea. And we talked about this a bit. I talked with Trollstein about this. It's like that idea in itself is bigger than an equity. It's bigger than a business. It's like, okay, the entire financial system's broken and we're positioning ourselves as this sort of choke point between the decaying capital that's rushing into the collateralized Bitcoin economy. And so I think to Soleil's point, that only scratches the surface of the products that are being created. That's just Strategy's offering. Now there's, products every week coming out built on the MSTR equity. So it's like, you just can't keep up,
Yeah. And the whole thing is just totally reflexive, right? Because, you're going to have any bond manager, any bond fund manager that buys Strike and holds on to it for a year is going to outperform any other bond manager in the market. And they get paid fees based on, managing a bond portfolio. And anybody that's holding a bond portfolio that's underperforming is going to see that bond manager and say, I need to move my capital to you because you're outperforming all these other guys. Like, how are you doing it in a bond portfolio? And now you see more capital move into these managers that understand the economy, understand the structure and the design of these products. And that's more capital that's going to flow into Strike and Strife. And the whole thing is reflexive in that it is, people will follow success. And I mean, just like walk outside and see what's going on with the strategy marketing and everything that they've got set up. Like, that is reflexive. Anybody that doesn't know about Bitcoin and they're coming to look at this is going to see, holy shit, like what, like these guys they're making a ton of money. This is a huge production, right? And I think that's going to cause additional reflexive nature and people following that continued success.
Well, I think a huge part of what you see out there with the marketing, I think that generated from this room. It's the people that started getting engaged. These aren't people that are looking at their core operating business. They've got a team now that's behind them, that's pushing them, and that team wanted to represent. And so you're starting to see, I just saw, I used to think this was the official orange tie of Bitcoin. And now I'm out there in the hall and I saw that now they've got their own orange ties with the Bitcoin logo. So, they missed their chance to sponsor it.
Ours is still official, though.
No, it's still official for this week. We might have to shift later. We're kind of invested in this whole thing now, but
we gotta push it. Yeah,
we got to push it. But I mean, it shows what happens when you really do embrace the fact that you have a retail community that's mostly interested in your equity and you bring them in, right? And you start engaging with them and start giving them what they're asking you for. It took a while. We were pushing for merch for a long time. Luckily, the ecosystem picked that up, started creating our own, but now to see it showing up and to see the way they're doing it, which is very clearly tailored towards the Bitcoin community, it's just amazing. It's amazing. It's incredible.
And that's kind of why I think I like the analogy of either ecosystem or economy, whichever way you want to go with it. We have cooperative players in the market, us, right? We have adversarial players in the market, the individuals that are shorting at institutional level for the converts and shorting the stock altogether in options activity. And then when you take it all together, you have to realize that an economic model is viable because Bitcoin is at the base of it, right? So with Bitcoin at the base of it, strategy on top of Bitcoin, and then all the products on top of strategy, you're scaling this economy out until it becomes economy of scale. And when an economy of scale becomes systemically important, it becomes unstoppable. It becomes self-perpetuating. It becomes like a coral reef. It becomes a true ecosystem, a true economy. And I think that's where we're heading. And I think that's what Saylor is trying to do. He's trying to get as much Bitcoin on the balance sheet as possible so that it scales. Bitcoin becomes systemically relevant or systemically important to the traditional finance market. And it becomes even easier to siphon away capital from all those other products. And it just grows bigger and bigger and bigger. And to Jeff's point, we haven't seen the end of offerings that are going to exist on top of this equity, right? It's only going to grow. We have the 2x lever plays, and we've all talked about them. We have the dividend plays. We have all the existing offerings. this is only the beginning of what I think is going to be a true economy that has Bitcoin at the heart of traditional finance in a way that can't be ignored. Right now, as you saw in the opening clip, there's still people calling it a Ponzi scheme. There's still people saying that Bitcoin is tulips. They're still calling Bitcoin a scam. They're still calling MicroStrategy, still calling for its failure, right? Every single time he does a new convert or a new ATM equity offering, you just have to go on Twitter and you see people saying, oh, he's diluting the stock. He's robbing the shareholders, so on and so forth. But, which is kind of funny because I've talked to so many people that want to be robbed apparently. And, that's not quite, that's not quite how it works. When you're actually being robbed, you don't go to the thief and say, you want more of my shit? So, that's why this thing is truly an economy. And it's not similar to like Mag 7 plays that have leverage on them and so on and so forth at all, because none of them are backed by anything. They're just backed by the faith in the company. Strategy is backed by Bitcoin. And Bitcoin by itself has a multi-billion-dollar mining industry. There's a multi-trillion-dollar asset that is fundamentally different from anything that currently exists in the market. So whenever someone tries to FUD you, just keep that in the back of your mind. This is fundamentally different. And maybe send them to a True North stream as well, or two, and we can educate them as well. But,
Yes, so many people just fail to understand that, Bitcoin is a $1.8 trillion asset, right? It's basically the 6th or 7th largest asset on the planet. And I think, when I try to orange pill people, that's usually what I lead in with. I don't think people really grasp how big this thing is, right? It's effectively the same as, buying a Mag 7 stock. Instead of, having all of the employees at Apple, like you have this decentralized community of everybody that's in this room and us and everybody that follows Bitcoin. So it's, so many people just fail to understand like the gravity, the size and scale of Bitcoin. And additionally, I'm getting to your point of like all these, koala bears and Ponzi bears. They fail to grasp the leverage, perspective, right? They will just immediately jump into, strategies over leveraged. They don't do any research. They understand that they're issuing debt, but they haven't done any research on, how much capital do they actually hold? What is their leverage ratio? How does this compare to the rest of the market? And, I could say that with certainty because you start talking to some of these people in the market and they are just totally clueless, right? Just completely clueless. They haven't done any of the math. Like proof of work is playing out here, right? Bitcoin is proof of work, and proof of work of understanding, a capital structure is, helps strengthen and, helps your conviction continue to evolve.
Well, I think that's part of what our group really tried to do in the beginning was this is complex to understand. I mean, who thought that everyone here was going to get a crash course in convertible
finance,
gammy trade,
ATM equity
issuances,
preferred
when they have to release 8K. I mean, we've learned so many things along the way that it's easy to have empathy for the people that are still fighting it and calling it a Ponzi scheme, because you do have a really steep learning curve that you have to climb to really build that conviction here. And so it doesn't really bother me that that's still going on, because I think success breeds interest. And now that we're seeing the scaling and the immense success that they're achieving, that's going to prompt people to really push to that next level of understanding beyond, well, they're just borrowing money and one day it's going to collapse. They've not even dug into, the structure of the money they're borrowing and how they're borrowing. What does non-recourse mean, right? This isn't traditional bank debt, like where you got loan to values and debt service coverage is on you, where you do give up some control of your future, right? If you have that type of debt, you can be in a position where you can lose things that were out of your control because it was out of your control. I started in banking. A lot of you will know that. And I was in distressed credit during the global financial crisis, which was a really interesting time to be in distressed credit because it was basically all we had. And what you find out is you get real sensitive. I got super risk averse coming out of that because I saw so many people that had built really good businesses, but because they took the wrong types of debt, they were susceptible to something like the global financial crisis to take their future out of their own hands. And so admittedly, when Startegy started with this and they had that secured loan, that made me very nervous. I had to see an evolution away from that because I knew that with an asset like this that's volatile and how quick banks can be to respond to you, going below a loan to value where they're going to go liquidate your collateral, that made me nervous. So I also had to learn what it meant for them to go into the capital markets, why they could get non-recourse debt, and why that made them such a stronger company. But it was a big awakening for me in terms of getting conviction and comfort with holding significant positions in an asset like MicroStrategy that's going to move all the time. I know that that's not one of those risks that I need to be concerned about. No matter how many people are telling you about the liquidation that's coming, when you dig in, you just find out that doesn't exist. That's not real. So it's liquidated. Yeah. I mean, so you've got to have empathy for those types of people, because a lot of people still have those same scars I had early. You've seen what happens when you borrow money. When they hear you're levering up, they get really nervous because they've probably known people that built good businesses and watched them lose them. And so when they see that with an equity, it makes them nervous. So that learning curve and helping people to move past that, I think, is one of the big services that the retail community offers out there.
Yeah. Strategy and Bitcoin are an ego test, right? You have to be comfortable knowing that you don't know everything, and you have to go learn things. You have to learn something new, and learning something new is hard. It takes time. It's it's not easy. And that's also kind of what we want to do. We want to teach you what we're learning, because we care a lot, right? We're at the cutting edge. We're at the front of this thing, and we've got all of our money on the line. And so we care so much that we're hungry for information, and we're, hanging on to every word on every earnings call, and then, trying to think through every component, right? How does this impact the capital structure? All right. I mean, Saylor released 40 KPIs last week, and you're like, oh my God, like, why'd you do that right before this? Right. Like, I'm not going to think about anything else. So yeah, thank you, Saylor, wherever you're at, for just completely ruining my weekend. But no, I mean, you have to be willing to learn. And it's been some of the feedback that we've gotten so far is that everybody's been very thankful for us breaking down what we've learned, which is very complex, and trying to communicate it in a way that's a little bit more digestible, like translate it into a little bit different of a language. And that's also kind of why I put this entire crew together, is everybody's got this different background. Everybody's got a different perspective, and it got a different way of learning, got a different way of communicating. And that's helped kind of pull it all together into our weekly streams, kind of what we're doing right now.
And speaking of the earnings call, can we just bow our heads for a moment of silence for, TradFi earnings calls? Because, rest in peace, because I was listening to it and I thought, holy crap, like a TradFi company has to put together the numbers from 2 months ago, telling you how much money they made, how many widgets they sold, how many they produced, and you're learning information after the fact, and then the market will say, okay, we got a miss, we're going to pull our money out, or we didn't miss as much, so we're going to buy more. Yeah. And what Strategy is doing is it's completely transparent. You already know what the Bitcoin price is, and you can multiply that times the number of Bitcoin they own. You don't need the earnings call. Even if they missed their EPS, we know Bitcoin is up, so the price didn't go down.
Yeah, which is wild. It was a huge loss.
Right? Why did we need to? We didn't care what what Strategy's Bitcoin price was 2 months ago. We know what it is now. And companies that are not on a Bitcoin standard, they're just telling you about the past. And at Strategy's earnings calls, they're telling you what they're going to do in the future.
Can we acknowledge the marketing that comes out of that, though?
Yeah.
When I think it was Trollstein that posted it on his, when Robinhood gave him the announcement that Strategy had missed earnings by 85,500%. I mean, if that won't capture investors' attention, I don't know what will. You don't get those types of numbers a lot in earnings misses. So what an opportunity for people to go, what in the heck is happening here? And why are people online still so excited about this? It's got to be baffling, right? It's bewilderment.
It's bewilderment. Yeah, everybody's bewildered for sure.
But okay, yes, and that's why the Ponzi conversations and all of the calls for it to fail are kind of funny to me. There's no company that has an entire website with all their financial metrics on it for you to go look at. And I've looked. I've invested in a lot of companies. I've tried to find this level of transparency in any of the Mag 7 stocks. I've tried to find this transparency in any of the other investments I've held. Strategy is the only Ponzi scheme that shows you exactly what the Ponzi is doing and then gives you systematic metrics about the Ponzi. So when people say that it's a Ponzi scheme online, Ben's a lot nicer than me. I'm the one that will tell someone they're an idiot, and I try not to. And I try to say, I've sent that strategy link to so many people already via DM, and they're like, well, what's this? I'm like, exactly. That's what makes this different. We have all the information at our fingertips. We have us. Like I used to follow Ben's stuff all the time. I follow Dan's stuff all the time. I follow Jer's stuff all the time. And that's how we got talking, because we were putting out metrics. We were all doing a different piece of the puzzle. And granted, strategy kind of took our cheese a little bit by putting out the strategy website, but we're fine with it. Again, we're fine with the Ponzi taking our shit from us. So that's what I'm saying. It is not a Ponzi. This is a very, very fundamentally different model. And we are all, and I know people say it all the time, we're so early. We really, really are. So I think that collectively we should take a moment of brevity in that to understand that we have collectively come together. We found this investment together. Sure, we're up here, but you guys have really fueled a lot of that. You guys fueled the desire for us to be up here. And I just want to say thank you for that. Yeah. Good job. Third row.
I would like to add that Bitcoin in general is incredibly isolating. You feel insane walking through the world of fiat, and you feel like you have a completely different perspective on the same exact world as everyone else. And I think a lot of the reason that all of you came here today, whether you know it or not, is that isolation. And you want to feel connection that hopefully we have provided somehow. And I've had quite a few conversations of people today asking about kind of how they can play the Bitcoin economy, or this economy that is building on top of strategy. And they're wondering, well, should I do, MSTY? Should I do options, right? And my response is always, everyone's different. I'm 22, right? I have a completely different time scale than you. But I always come back to, if we're 20 years in the future, what is the single most optimal strategy you could have, right? And to me, it's being on the Bitcoin standard. And what does that mean? It means that your unit of account is Bitcoin. So every year you're optimizing for more Bitcoin. You get 1 Bitcoin this year, 2 the next, right? And for me, the way that I think about it is Bitcoin is my savings. That's just, we have the ability to save money now. Strategy is an investment because there's counterparty risk, right? You don't technically hold the Bitcoin, but you're also getting paid for that risk. And then for me, I like to, trade options and you drift at this bi-weekly 1080s, baby. But,
Good Lord.
Not financial advice.
It's going to be your week, though.
And
1 week.
And honestly, maybe it's a bad idea. I mean, I've been, I've done well, but I think it makes sense for me because of my age. But the point I'm trying to get at is that everyone has this insight into Bitcoin and is now able to do different things because of strategy within the traditional finance system. And I think when you're thinking about this personally, you need to be thinking about your life, how you want to live. And this gets into deeper questions of what kind of life do you want to live? How do you want to live it? And what do you want to do with this wealth that is coming into your life, already or in the near future?
Well, first, I got to say, you really drove that age thing home pretty hard. And, I don't know what was meant by that, but hopefully this is why we're so lucky, right? Is this group has such a wide range of life experience and ages where, like, when I was Mason's age, I was an idiot, right? I mean, go back to when you were 22.
Still am.
And tried to finish at college. And, Mason and Dan, I mean, these guys are just so far ahead of where the rest of us were that, it gives you a lot more faith in the future, because these are the types of guys that are coming up that are going to be leading things. And that's just absolutely incredible. The other thing we get is the perspective of what happens in college campuses. Because I think for a lot of us, we expected that to be the generation that would just understand Bitcoin right out of the gate. Like, this would speak to them. That's what we all thought. And I remember when we started asking you guys about it, like, are your friends talking about Bitcoin? Are they all into Bitcoin? You're like, none of them talk about it. They don't care. And I think that's fascinating, because that's where I expected it to happen, but it's really not. I see a lot of the people getting invested in it that are later in their lives, 50, 60, 70, people that have sold businesses and they need somewhere to park the capital. So they're looking for an opportunity here. And those are the types that I saw the most, and I was expecting it to come from your group. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what you see.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this the other day. So when I first heard of Bitcoin, it was in 2014. I was 12 years old.
My God. My God.
And
You're giving too many details. We don't need all of it.
Yeah. Let's just.
And I saw it on a BuzzFeed video, and they were going around using it as a currency. And I would say 12 years old, that's when you're beginning to be conscious, right? When you're starting to interpret the world or understand it.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah. And so, Ben, I think you're exactly right. Like Dan and I's generation is the first one where we've grown up with Bitcoin as a thing in the world that just existed. Yep. Right. Yep. And maybe it was the very first early versions, but I think you're exactly right that the current, the current student body on college campuses. I don't know if you guys saw the Ohio State, where the guy giving the graduation, and they booed Bitcoin.
Yeah, have fun saying for.
Yeah. There's a lot of negativity around Bitcoin and crypto. It's called crypto. People just say crypto, and the association is with FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, and beyond that, people aren't curious. And I think the problem has to get worse before people turn to the solution, because you have to understand the problem before you can understand the solution.
I think it needs something to protect. Yeah. Right. So I think that's why it became so prevalent in the, people that were in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, is because by that time you've put a huge amount of your manual labor into building this base for yourself.
You have something to lose.
You have something to lose at that point. And so, Saylor says it a lot, where people find Bitcoin when they have to. Yeah. And when people are getting to that point in their life where they're finally looking to where they're going to make that pivot, and you get to stop doing the things that you don't really want to be doing, and you want to focus all your time on the things that you really, truly enjoy. For a lot of people, life kind of starts for them at retirement, and they so desperately want to get there, but you get paralyzed with fear of screwing that up. And so I do think that it comes out of that, that need to protect what you've built. We just come to different conclusions, right? Where people before, who are just, starting to get into investing, they just view it as speculative and internet magic money. But for the people that have really gone down the rabbit hole to figure out what characteristics do I need in an asset to make sure that this outlives me, right? That I can finally free myself to go do things that I only want to do. I mean, that's what everyone's pushing for in their life. And I've talked to so many people that are here where that's where Bitcoin took you. Right? You got to that point where, it finally got you over that retirement hurdle, and it got you in the position where you get to reset your life and decide, what is it I want to be doing? And believe it or not, as weird as we all are, this is what we want to be doing, right? That's why we're here. Because a lot of people are freed up, and this is what you're doing with your free time, and you're spending money to come in and, talk to guys that talk in their dark basements on the internet or stand up at their desk, because I don't know why he does that, but that's up to Jeff. I mean, so it's incredible when you find something that solves such a fundamental need for your life and for the length of your financial future, that you're willing to spend the time to read the books, to watch the podcasts, to watch live streams, to dig in and get a true understanding of what you're putting your hard-earned money into and why it's good to store it there. I just think that that's why we see that gap. You guys are all starting out, and you get in that position where, my whole future's ahead of me. You guys are just well ahead of the curve because you're going, I'd kind of like to be doing what I want to do for my entire life. And you're setting yourselves up to do that. And I think that's so powerful. And you guys are going to just be a huge message out there for people your age that see that you can dive into something, and you can, going the other way. You can really dive into something, and you can get into it early. And just because you're young, people aren't going to discredit you. If you've learned anything in this day and age, it's that every single person has a unique experience to bring. And sometimes it's things like that long time frame that give them a different perspective that I'm going to have or my parents are going to have. And I think that's such a valuable voice for these communities.
Yeah, so my son is also 22 and he just graduated, and we were talking about his future a little bit, and it goes back to what you were talking about with risk. First of all, he wants to live in a van. All right, let's get that out of the way. And but when I told him, I was like, look, the van might be a mistake. Your whole ass degree might be a mistake. your career choice might be a mistake, but you're 22, you can't even make a mistake. Like, just go ahead and do whatever you want to do, stack sats, and everything will work itself out.
And that's the point about all of this that's so interesting. One way or another, tuition is expensive in this learning curve, right? And all of us have paid it. Some of you have paid it in time. Some of you have paid it in opportunity costs. Some of you have paid it in actual losses. Some of you have paid it like me, getting burned alive in options in 2017, right? We've all learned our hard lessons. And to that point, this is why I also want to say, coming back to what Mason said about being insane, that's okay. Being insane is fine, actually. Because if you feel like you're the crazy person, you might just be onto something. And I think that all of us share that in spades, because I know for a fact each of you have had the experience where you've tried to talk about strategy to someone, you try to talk about Bitcoin to someone, and they don't listen. But Mason, Dan, Soleia's son, these guys are ahead of the curve, and they're going to pay less tuition than we paid going along this journey. And that shows progress, right? There's always going to be a new crop of Bitcoiners. There's always going to be a new crop of strategy investors. But it's very, very sobering to see that on this stage, we have guys in 3 different age groups that are all in this opportunity together. And in this crowd, we have 4, sometimes 5 different age groups of individuals that are in this opportunity together. I think that bodes well for the future. And whenever you feel uncertain about things, take heart in that, understanding that you're not alone in this. There's many people that see what you're seeing. And if you feel that you're crazy, be okay with it. Don't feel deterred by that. Just stay on the path, and you should be laughing yourself to the bank in the future.
And I think the silver lining of that, or the part that people haven't quite gotten to, is this idea that I think a lot of people see there's a problem. Like, a lot of people our age are graduating, they're getting, investment banking jobs in the city, they're working consulting wherever. And, their salaries aren't covering their costs to live in the way it used to. There's some statistic like 70% of new college graduates in Manhattan are being subsidized by their parents just to live, right? And that's nuts, considering like these high profile jobs. And so I think a lot of people are seeing, and then for people with assets who are older, who've spent a lifetime building them, they're seeing them erode in purchasing power. So for younger people, it's their jobs, their wages. For older people, it's their assets. And I think a lot of people haven't made that leap yet, but you have to look outside the system to find the answer to that kind of decay. And for young people, what I've noticed is like, why is everything so expensive? Why is everything so expensive? You go Bitcoin, they go, what are you talking about? That has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Answer. And so in that respect, I think it is our duty to continue talking about Bitcoin, but it is in the investment conversation, like it is with the ETFs and stuff. It is part of what young people are learning when they look at investing. So I think there's a lot of hope and positivity there.
And we're not crypto bros, right? Like everybody, like I'm sure you try to talk to them about Bitcoin and they say, oh, you're a crypto bro. It's like, no, we're not crypto bros. We're strategists. Don't you see the orange ties, right? And, so many people lump Bitcoin and crypto into this just kind of like one topic, but they're so vastly different. And, in the past, like 4 years ago, these types of products that can help you reshape your world and reshape your retirement or whatever that may be, they didn't exist, right? You had to go take risk in with FTX. You're like, ooh, I could park some, Ethereum over here and get some yield, and I have to trust the Sam Bankman-Fried to not run a crazy over-leveraged bank, right? And that I know nothing about. And now you have a just completely different vehicle that is incredibly transparent and providing you that perspective, and you're being rational, right? This has nothing to do with like crypto bro. This is like rational, critical thinking about how to manage capital into the future. And that narrative's continuing to change.
Yeah, I think, especially in the world that we're going into with AI and automation.
We'll get there. Yeah, let's hit it.
Yeah, let's
dive right in.
So
yeah.
I think it's important to note that our current fiat system is fundamentally incompatible with the rate at which deflation is coming from AI and from automation. There's a lot of white-collar jobs that are going to be wiped out, and then there's going to be a lot of automation that wipes out blue-collar jobs. And this deflation is deflation is incompatible with the inflation required to keep our monetary system afloat. We live in an inflationary system, and that's what Bitcoin is solving for at this moment. It's very serendipitous that Bitcoin is rising, or was invented, when AI is starting to take off. Because otherwise, the system, the fiat system, will get increasingly centralized, and people will be poorer and poorer and poorer, and won't have the abundance that should be created from AI and automation. So what Bitcoin really is it's allowing you to reprice the world in a system outside of the fiat system. And it's just truth. It allows the abundance from AI, from automation, to manifest through lower prices when priced in Bitcoin. And you have to keep that in mind in the world that we're going into, which is only accelerating. If you haven't played around with AI, you should.
Please do.
It's incredible, and it's going to wipe out so many jobs. And it's not something to be afraid of. That's really key here, is you shouldn't be afraid of the abundance, the incredible knowledge that it is dispersing out into the world. That is fundamentally a good thing. Like, don't be afraid of the shovel or the excavator because you want to use your hands. It's a good thing, and it should be embraced. But what people are afraid of is the abundance not coming to them. And the only way that it will come to them is via Bitcoin. So it's going to be a rough transition, but if you are holding Bitcoin now, you are prepared for that world.
Bitcoin, if you want, to Mason's point, you want to think about it, Bitcoin is a hedge against an increasingly uncertain and accelerating future. We are going to run into a wall, I think, to his point, which he just illustrated, where automation, robotics, artificial intelligence are going to start slowly but surely wiping out jobs. They're going to create new jobs, but in a deflationary model, to Mason's point about inflation, an inflationary system being incompatible with that, you run into a crossroads between having too much that you can produce, too many people that can consume it, but not enough work for the people to be able to consume it. It's a perfect storm, or what I call a clusterfuck, of all kinds of competing structures that just are fundamentally incompatible with one another. And we do need something that can hedge against that. So people call Bitcoin a hedge against inflation, but it's really a hedge against the future. It allows you to be certain in uncertain times. And I think that's going to be something that becomes increasingly apparent as Bitcoin grows and as adoption grows.
Bingo. All right, so we got about 5 minutes left. Maybe we'll do final thoughts. We'll kick it around, final thoughts, pass it around, and we'll have a 5-minute break before we start the keynotes. So maybe we'll start with you, Dan.
My final thought is Ben made a really kind point to say that, you know, Mason and I are much younger, but included in the group. And I'm very appreciative of everyone in the audience who's interacted with me on X, all of you guys who have been mentors to Mason and I. I think like this whole group here is definitely kind of a diffusion of information. And it's really, really powerful for young people like myself to learn from your experience. Like whether it be that DM you send me, like, hey, like I've been here before, like don't do this, X, Y, and Z. Like it's helpful. So thanks everyone. Thank you.
Keep tagging us and stuff too. Like it's really helpful. Like we read a lot. We don't read everything, but we try to read as much as we can. And like we're taking in information like a fire hose.
Yeah, it got overwhelming in a hurry. That was for sure.
It did,
which none of us really expected. But yeah, I mean, this whole journey that we've been on is one that really does change the way that you live your life. And you know, one thing with this group that we need to give someone a lot of credit, which is Jeff, because as you can imagine, this is how all of our streams start. We've always got an idea of where we're going to go. And then we skip it. Like I never got to ask people to raise their hands if you have a 60-40 portfolio. Anyone? Didn't think so. Yeah, this is not the room for 60-40 portfolio.
60% Bitcoin, 40% Bitcoin?
Yeah. So, but I mean, Jeff has done an incredible job bringing this group together and really building a community around it. So, you know, just hats off to you, Jeff. Been incredible bringing us Abracadabra, guys.
I guess what I would say is thank you again for everyone coming here, taking your time, spending your money.
This isn't the end of the show, you know?
Well, I know. But I just want to make sure I say thank you again. And to Ben's point, it is really surreal how this has all come together. I didn't know what this guy looked like for 6 months. And we talked to each other on a daily basis, right? So but we were just shooting ideas, bouncing ideas back and forth. And that's what we've been doing with all of you. We're bouncing our ideas out into the world, and you've been very, very receptive to them, and we are grateful for that. And again, I say that if you are ever nervous about this opportunity, watch our videos, do the research yourself, perhaps empower yourself in this journey, because it's going to be a long journey. There's going to be ups and downs, but fortunately, we plan on being here for that entire journey. And if you will join us, we'll be happy to have you.
Yeah,
The only reason I'm here today is because last March I DM'd Jeff and said, I want to talk to you. And I think it's important to note that because Bitcoin is a virus that you spread through connecting with people. And someone was asking me, what's the best way that we can help Bitcoin or help strategy or help this cause? And I said, connecting with people. You have to put yourself out there. You have to have easy conversations, hard conversations, but more importantly, you have to make the attempt. And that's, if you take anything away today, I would say go out and connect with people, talk to people, because that's how all of this came together, right? Yeah. We came together and we talked and we said, we're gonna do this. And now look at this. It's insane. But, yeah, talk to people, make connections, and spread the word of Bitcoin.
Yeah. Good job, Mason. Yeah.
On March 5th, 2024, I saw Quant Bros 1. On April 8th, I sold half of my Bitcoin. Am I allowed to say that? Do I get escorted out? No refunds?
We'll allow it. We'll allow it.
And I bought Strategy. On December 1st, 2024, I put in my 2 weeks notice. So,
Hell yeah.
So what that made me realize is that understanding Bitcoin is like seeing the future, and then investing in strategy is getting in a time machine and going to the future at the speed of light.
Yeah, good job.
Just touching on the AI part for a moment. For myself, I'm not always the first with a new technology. And sometimes when we talk in the more general sense, it's like, well, what should I do? Right? Several months ago, I went to chatgpt.com and realized I could use it. And then when Grain was talking to me about, hey, I got my slides for my for my presentation. Do you have slides for your keynote? And I'm like, maybe. He's like, use Grok. Well, what's that? Grok. You can put it in, you can just use it. So, I think that's part of what I'm going to try to be cognizant of is like, what can people do that's an action item, right? And yeah, just thrilled to be here with all of you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Again, thank you to everybody for being here. The world is changing. The world's moving really fast. You know, I feel constantly like I'm hanging onto a rocket with one arm. You know, sailors coming out here just making it go faster and faster. And we're all trying to hang on. And you know, I appreciate you guys hanging on to every word, right? We're rockets too. We're all, you know, hitching our wagons to the rocket, right? So, yeah, very appreciative of everything that's going on here. And yeah, I'm super hopeful, right? Bitcoin is hope, and I think we're going higher, right? I think we're going higher. Yeah.